The grand diplomatic chamber aboard the Vexelian mothership gleamed with polished obsidian and pulsing bioluminescent veins that threaded through the ceiling. Ambassador Neriel Favrin stood perfectly still, her silver skin reflecting the harsh, artificial light as she listened to her father, High Counselor Dravis, announce her fate. "The arrangement is finalized," he declared to the assembled dignitaries. "My daughter will wed Commander Vrax to seal our alliance with the Morcadian Empire." Neriel's four-chambered heart constricted painfully. Commander Vrax, the infamous Morcadian warlord, was known throughout seven-star systems for his brutality. His species, evolved from apex predators, stood 3 meters tall with ridged exoskeletons and multiple rows of serrated teeth. Worse than his fearsome appearance were the stories of his previous mates, none surviving beyond a standard solar cycle. "Father," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please reconsider." High Counselor Dravis didn't even glance at her. "The decision is made. The ceremony commences tomorrow." As the council members dispersed, Neriel remained frozen in place, her silver eyes fixed on the vast viewport where distant stars offered no comfort. The Vexelian-Morcadian alliance would protect her people from the encroaching Hive Collective. But at what cost? A soft clearing of a throat drew her attention. Lieutenant Cairo Ravek, the lone human diplomatic attaché assigned to the Vexelian fleet, stood nearby. Unlike the other embassy staff who averted their eyes from her misfortune, the human's gaze met hers directly. "Ambassador Favrin," he said, his voice low. "I couldn't help overhearing." "Then you know I am condemned," she replied bitterly. Cairo stepped closer, his brown skin glowing warmly under the chamber's ethereal light. "Perhaps not. Humans have a history of finding alternative solutions." "What alternative exists?" "The treaty has been signed in quantum-sealed ink." "The treaty specifies a union." "Yes," Cairo acknowledged, his hazel eyes carrying a strange intensity. "But it doesn't specify who must participate in that union." Neriel's bioluminescent markings flickered with confusion. "I don't understand." "Meet me in the tertiary observatory at midnight cycle," he whispered. "Bring nothing but yourself." Before she could question him further, Cairo bowed formally and retreated, leaving Neriel bewildered but with something she hadn't possessed moments earlier, a dangerous, fragile spark of hope. That night, as the mothership's systems dimmed to simulation of evening, Neriel slipped through the corridors, her ceremonial robes exchanged for simple attire. The tertiary observatory was rarely used, positioned at an awkward junction of the ship's engineering and diplomatic sectors. When the door slid open with a soft hiss, she found Cairo waiting, silhouetted against the spectacular nebula visible through the curved viewport. "Lieutenant Ravek, explain yourself," she demanded, though her voice lacked its usual authority. "Humans are newcomers to the galactic stage," he said without preamble, "which means we're often underestimated. What most species don't realize is that before we reach the stars, we spent millennia perfecting the art of defiance." He turned to face her fully, expression resolute. "Ambassador, I have a plan to save you from this fate, but you'll need to trust me completely." "Your plan is madness," Neriel whispered, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with anxiety as Cairo finished explaining. "Diplomatic substitution has never been successfully invoked in a binding alliance treaty." "That's where you're wrong," Cairo countered, pulling up a holographic display from his wrist device. Ancient Vexelian legal text scrolled before them. The 13th precept of interspecies agreements enacted during the galactic confluence of 2879. A representative of equal or greater diplomatic standing may substitute as signatory vessel in matrimonial alliances. Neriel scrutinized the text, her silver eyes widening. "This hasn't been invoked in 14 generations. But it's never been struck from your legal code," Cairo pointed out. "And I've confirmed the Morcadians recognize all foundational Vexelian laws as part of their treaty conditions." "Even if this works legally, you would be sacrificing yourself," Neriel said. "Commander Vrax is notorious for consuming his mates." "Yes, I'm aware." Cairo's expression remained unflinching. "But humans aren't as fragile as we appear. and the Morcadians have never attempted to bond with a human before. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. What they don't know is that certain compounds in human biochemistry are mildly toxic to Morcadian physiology. Not enough to kill, but enough to make us unappetizing. How could you possibly know that? Cairo's smile was enigmatic. Let's just say the human intelligence network is more extensive than most species realize. We've been preparing contingency plans since our first contact with the Morcadian Empire. Niriel's gaze dropped to the floor, her voice barely audible. Why would you do this for me? For someone not of your species? Because humans don't believe anyone should be forced into marriage, regardless of their origin. Cairo answered simply. And because your research on quantum photonic communication could save billions of lives across the galaxy, lives that would be lost if your work ended with you. A sharp beep from Cairo's device interrupted them. We need to move quickly. The ceremonial preparations begin in 4 hours. My father will never approve this substitution, Niriel warned. He won't have to. The precept requires only the approval of the Vexellian High Judicator. Cairo's expression turned grim. Fortunately, Judicator Elthra owes me a favor. Something involving her offspring and a rather delicate situation on Proxima Station last year. Niriel's markings flashed with surprise. You saved Judicator Elthra's child. Let's just say I helped them avoid an interstellar incident. Cairo extended his hand, a distinctly human gesture of partnership. Ambassador Favrin, will you accept my offer of substitution? Niriel stared at his outstretched hand, weighing centuries of tradition against her survival. Finally, she reached out, her slender silver fingers meeting his. If we're to attempt this madness, you must call me Niriel, she said. Cairo's smile was warm. Then let's rewrite your fate, Niriel. They slipped from the observatory, moving through the ship's darkened corridors toward the judicial quarters. Neither noticed the small surveillance drone that detached from the ceiling, its optical sensors following their retreat. The ceremonial chamber aboard the Morcadian vessel pulsed with the deep red light favored by its species, casting grotesque shadows across the gathered dignitaries. Commander Vrax stood on the raised platform, his massive form draped in ceremonial armor fashioned from the bones of conquered enemies. 3 rows of serrated teeth gleamed as he surveyed the assembled crowd with predatory anticipation. High Counselor, Dravis entered with his entourage, his expression stern as he approached the Morcadian leader. Commander Vrax, we come to honor the sacred bond between our empires. Vrax's mandibles clicked in what passed for pleasure among his kind. Where is my bride? I grow hungry for the union. A murmur rippled through the gathered officials as the side door opened, not to reveal Niriel, but Cairo in formal diplomatic attire, the blue and silver of Earth's interstellar coalition emblazoned across his chest. What is this treachery? Vrax snarled, his secondary limbs extending from beneath his armor in threat display. Judicator Elthra stepped forward, her ancient form supported by a hovering gravity platform. Her voice, though frail, carried the weight of Vexellian law. There is no treachery, Commander. Lieutenant Cairo Ravek invokes the 13th precept of interspecies agreements. She raised a gnarled hand, projecting the ancient text for all to see. As Earth's designated diplomatic representative to the Vexellian fleet, he holds the necessary standing to serve as substitute in this alliance binding. High Counselor Dravis's face contorted with rage. This is absurd. I did not authorize. Your authorization is not required, Counselor. Judicator Elthra interrupted. The law requires only my judgment, which I have rendered. The substitution is valid. Vrax's massive form trembled with barely contained fury. I agreed to bond with a Vexellian female, not a human male. The treaty specifies a diplomatic representative of the Vexellian fleet, Cairo said calmly, stepping forward. I qualify under the statutes of the agreement, unless, of course, you wish to nullify the alliance entirely. The implication hung heavy in the air. Without the alliance, the Morcadian Empire would stand alone against the expanding Hive Collective, whose biomechanical swarms had already consumed 3 star systems along their border. Vrax's eyes narrowed to venomous slits, You play a dangerous game, human. Not a game, Commander, Cairo replied, maintaining unwavering eye contact despite the difference in their heights. An application of law to preserve the spirit of our alliance while respecting the dignity of all parties. A tense silence fell over the chamber as Vrax considered his options, his secondary limbs twitching with agitation. Finally, he barked a harsh laugh that sent several attendees skittering backward. You have courage, human. Perhaps you will provide more entertainment than the Silver One would have. He turned to his advisors. The treaty stands. Prepare the binding ceremony. As preparations resumed, Neriel approached Cairo, her voice low. He accepted too easily. Vrax is planning something. Of course he is, Cairo murmured. That's counting on it. Neriel's markings flashed with alarm. What aren't you telling me? Before Cairo could answer, Morcadian attendants surrounded him, separating them as they began the ceremonial preparations. The last glimpse Neriel had of him was his confident smile, either the expression of a man with a brilliant plan or of one walking willingly to his doom. From the shadows, a figure observed the proceedings with keen interest. Captain Zoalara, Tyvek of the human stealth vessel. Defiance tapped her comm unit. The lieutenant is in position. Begin Phase 2. The bonding ceremony progressed with all the subtlety of a neutron star collapse. Morcadian rituals favored displays of dominance, and Commander Vrax spared no opportunity to emphasize Cairo's subordinate position in their union. Yet the human maintained perfect composure, following each ritualistic humiliation with unexpected grace. Kneel before your master, the Morcadian priest commanded, his voice like gravel churning through an industrial processor. Cairo sank to one knee, but kept his spine straight and his gaze level, a posture that conveyed respect without submission. This subtle defiance wasn't lost on Vrax, whose upper mandibles clicked with irritation. From her position among the Vexelian delegation, Neriel watched with mounting dread. The final phase of the ceremony approached, the taste of bonding, where Vrax would bite into Cairo's shoulder, injecting a paralytic venom that would facilitate the consummation later in private. As the priest withdrew a ceremonial blade to prepare Cairo for the taste, a commotion erupted at the chamber's entrance. A Morcadian soldier burst in, his exoskeleton bearing the marks of recent combat. Commander, the Hive Collective has breached the Ceteran border. 3 battlecruisers have already fallen. The assembled dignitaries erupted in chaos. The Ceteran system was barely 2 light jumps from their current position. Vrax roared for silence. This changes nothing. The ceremony continues. With respect, Commander, Cairo interjected smoothly, rising to his feet. An immediate military response would be prudent. The bonding can resume after the threat is neutralized. You seek to delay our union, Vrax snarled. On the contrary, Cairo countered. I seek to ensure you have an empire left to return to. The Hive Collective's strategy of targeting ceremonial gatherings is well documented. This chamber could be their next target. Vrax hesitated, his tactical mind wrestling with his pride. Finally, he signaled to his war council. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment. He turned to Cairo, lowering his massive head until they were eye to eye. Our bonding is merely postponed, human. When I return victorious, you will learn what it means to be mated to a Morcadian commander. As the Morcadians hurried to their battle stations, Neriel slipped through the crowd to Cairo's side. That was fortuitous timing, she murmured suspiciously. Cairo's expression remained neutral. Very. The Hive doesn't typically attack during ceremonial periods. They consider it inefficient. Perhaps they're evolving their tactics, Cairo suggested, guiding her toward the exit with subtle pressure at her elbow. Once they were alone in a service corridor, Neriel confronted him. You knew this would happen. Not exactly this, Cairo admitted. But I knew something would interrupt the ceremony. The human fleet has been feeding false intelligence to the Hive for weeks, suggesting the Morcadian defenses would be compromised during this gathering. Neriel's bioluminescent patterns flared with shock. You manipulated a Hive incursion? Do you realize how many lives you've put at risk? 0, Cairo said firmly. Because there is no Hive incursion. The reports are false. generated by our deep cover operatives. By the time Vrax reaches the Ceteran border, he'll find nothing but empty space and a very confused Ceteran defense force. And what happens when he returns, furious at being deceived? Cairo checked his wrist device. We'll be long gone by then. Captain Tyvek should be docking with the auxiliary hangar in approximately 12 minutes. Captain who? My extraction team, Cairo explained. Your extraction team now too, if you're willing to leave this life behind. Neriel stared at him, in disbelief. You planned this entire deception just to free me from the marriage? Not just that, Cairo said. Your research on quantum photonic communication could revolutionize interstellar travel and communication. Under Vrax it would be weaponized. With us it could transform the galaxy. Before Neriel could respond, an alarm blared through the ship. A voice over the intercom announced, Security breach in Auxiliary Hangar 3. All personnel report to containment stations. Cairo's expression hardened. Change of plans. We need to move now. The corridors of the Morcadian vessel transformed into a labyrinth of chaos as emergency protocols engaged. Crimson warning lights bathed the passageways, casting Cairo and Neriel in blood-red hues as they raced against the security lockdown. This way, Cairo urged, pulling Neriel down a maintenance shaft. His wrist device projected a three-dimensional schematic of the ship's infrastructure. There's an emergency evacuation pod 2 levels down that should bypass the main security grid. Neriel followed, her silver skin now dulled with stress patterns. Even if we reach an escape pod, the Morcadian defense grid will vaporize us before we clear the ship's gravitational field. That's why we're not aiming for open space, Cairo replied, pausing at a junction to check for patrols. We're heading for docking cradle 17. Captain Tyvek will be waiting. In the middle of a security lockdown? That's suicide. The Defiance isn't your average transport vessel, Cairo said with a hint of pride. It's equipped with experimental, phase shift technology based on your quantum photonic theories. The Morcadians can't target what their sensors can't detect. They descended through the maintenance shaft, the sounds of pursuit growing more distant. When they emerged on the lower level, they found themselves in an eerily quiet cargo bay. Something's wrong, Neriel whispered. This area should be crawling with security. Cairo's expression tightened. They're not looking for us here because they already have a welcoming committee in place. As if summoned by his words, a squad of Morcadian, elite guards materialized from behind storage containers, their exoskeletons enhanced with stealth plating. Leading them was a figure that made Neriel's heart stutter, Vrax himself. Clever deception, human, the commander growled, his massive form advancing slowly. False hive reports. A phantom extraction team. Did you really believe the most successful predator species in the quadrant wouldn't recognize a trap? Cairo positioned himself between Neriel and the Morcadians. It was worth a try. Vrax's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement. I must admit I underestimated human cunning. For that alone, I'll grant you a warrior's death, rather than the slow digestion I had planned. Generous of you, Cairo, replied dryly. His hand slid to his waist, fingers brushing against what appeared to be a standard diplomatic insignia. Neriel recognized the gesture from their earlier conversations about human culture. He was signaling her to be ready. Before you kill us, Cairo said, I'm curious. How did you see through our plan? Vrax gestured toward a small hovering drone, the same surveillance unit that had followed them on the Vexelian ship. Your species has yet to learn that the walls themselves have eyes in this part of space. A valuable lesson, Cairo acknowledged. Here's one in return. Humans rarely plan for just one contingency. In a fluid motion, he pressed his insignia and threw himself backward, pulling Neriel down as a blinding flash erupted from the badge. The Morcadians, with their light-sensitive compound eyes, roared in agony. Cover your ears, Cairo shouted. A second later, a concussive wave rippled through the cargo bay, knocking the Morcadian guards off their feet. The wall behind them shimmered and dissolved, revealing the sleek outline of a vessel where solid bulkhead had appeared to be. Optical camouflage, Neriel gasped, as understanding dawned. Holographic projection coupled with sensory manipulators, Cairo confirmed, pulling her toward the newly revealed ship. The Defiance has been here the whole time. The vessel's airlock opened, revealing a compact bridge where a woman with sharp features and close-cropped silver hair waited. "You're late, Lieutenant," she barked. "Traffic problems, Captain," Cairo replied, helping Niriel aboard. "Captain Zoalara, Tyvek didn't waste time on pleasantries. Extraction complete. Initiating phase shift in 3, 2. The ship shuddered as a gravitational tether locked onto them. Vrax, recovering faster than his subordinates, had activated the bay's emergency containment system. "They've got us in a tractor lock," Tyvek shouted, her fingers flying over the controls. Cairo turned to Niriel, urgency in his eyes. "Your research, the quantum photonic field disruption, could it break a gravitational tether?" "Theoretically, yes, but I've never implemented it on this scale. Theory will have to do," he said, guiding her to the ship's engineering station. "Because we're out of alternatives." The Defiance's engine core thrummed beneath Niriel's palms as she interfaced with the ship's systems. Human technology felt primitive compared to Vexalian designs, yet possessed an innovative elegance she hadn't anticipated. "The principle is sound," she muttered, reconfiguring the phase shift drive to accommodate her calculations. "But your power systems weren't designed for quantum photonic manipulation. We'll get one attempt before the relays burn out." Cairo worked beside her, anticipating her needs with unexpected precision. "The drive coils can handle a 15-second surge if we redirect auxiliary power." On the bridge, Captain Tyvek maintained a stream of colorful human expletives as she fought to keep the ship stable against the gravitational tether's increasing pull. Through the viewports, they could see Vrax directing his engineers to strengthen the containment field. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster," Tyvek shouted, hull integrity dropping to 70%. Niriel's bioluminescent patterns flashed, with inspiration. "We don't need to break the tether, we just need to reverse its polarity." "Creating a repulsion wave," Cairo finished her thought. "Brilliant." Their fingers flew over the controls in perfect synchronization. For Niriel, the moment transcended their desperate circumstances. Never before had another being so effortlessly comprehended her theoretical leaps. "Ready on my mark," she announced. 3, 2. The ship lurched violently as a second tether locked on from the opposite direction. "They're trying to tear us apart," Tyvek warned. 50 seconds to structural failure." Niriel made a final adjustment. "Initiating now." The Defiance's lights dimmed as power surged into the modified phase shift drive. A visible wave of distortion rippled outward from the ship, colliding with the gravitational tethers. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then reality seemed to hiccup. Where the tethers had been exerting opposing forces, they suddenly repelled each other with equal vigor. The Morcadian tractor beams, still active but now reversed, slammed back into their emitters with catastrophic results. Secondary explosions cascaded through the docking bay. "Go!" Niriel shouted. Tyvek didn't need to be told twice. Warbinsau shot forward, bursting through the destabilized hangar field into open space. Behind them, alarms wailed as the Morcadian vessel struggled to contain the chain reaction of failing systems. "Phase shift drive engaging in 3, 2, 1, Tyvek announced. The stars around them blurred as the ship transitioned into quantum phase, becoming essentially undetectable to conventional sensors. They had escaped, hours later, safely hidden. In the shadow of a gas giant several systems away, Niriel found Cairo in the observation deck, staring out at the swirling atmospheric patterns below. "Your captain says the drive modifications worked better than expected," she said, joining him at the viewport. "We've essentially created a prototype for practical quantum photonic transportation." "We," Cairo noted with a smile. "Not just you." Niriel's markings pulsed with embarrassment. The implementation was a collaborative effort. "And where will you take your collaboration next?" he asked. "Earth has extended an official invitation for you to continue your research at our Advanced Sciences Division. Full diplomatic immunity, complete creative freedom." "A generous offer," Niriel acknowledged, "but I'm not certain I wish to trade one form of control for another." What would you choose if the choice were truly yours? The question startled her. Throughout her existence, Niriel's path had been determined by others. Her father, her position, her duty to her species. The concept of personal choice felt almost foreign. I would choose exploration, she finally said. There are theories I've developed that cannot be tested in controlled environments. I need to study quantum photonic phenomena at the edges of known space near gravitational anomalies and stellar nurseries. Cairo's expression brightened. As it happens, the Defiance is being reassigned to deep space scientific exploration. Captain Tyvek mentioned their short, a chief science officer. You planned this too? Niriel asked, though without accusation. I merely created possibilities, Cairo replied. The choices are, and always will be, yours to make. Niriel turned, her gaze back to the gas giant below. Its swirling storms mirroring the tumult of possibilities suddenly opened to her. For the first time in her life, no treaty dictated her future. No familial obligation constrained her potential. What will happen to my father and the Vexelian fleet? She asked, already addressed. When Vrax failed to capture us, he blamed your father for the deception. The alliance is shattered, but in the confusion, the Vexelians have formed a new coalition with the Ceteran Collective, a much more compatible partner without matrimonial demands. Niriel shook her head in amazement. You humans are terrifyingly thorough. We've had to be, Cairo said simply. We're physically weaker than most species, with no natural defenses and a fraction of your lifespan. Strategic thinking isn't just our strength, it's our survival. He turned to face her fully. So, Dr. Favren, what will it be? Earth, home, or the stars? Niriel's markings pulsed with a pattern Cairo hadn't seen before, determination mixed with something that might have been joy. The stars, she said. Definitely the stars. 3 days later, as the Defiance prepared to depart for the uncharted regions beyond the Perseus Arm, Niriel stood on the bridge beside Captain Tyvek. Cairo entered, now wearing the insignia of a diplomatic science liaison. Course plotted for the Cerulean Veil, Tyvek announced. Dr. Favren's quantum photonic drive modifications should get us there in half the standard time. Ready when you are, Captain, Niriel responded, her silver fingers dancing across the Yao science station with newfound confidence. As the ship hummed with pre-launch preparations, Cairo moved to stand beside her. Having second thoughts? He asked quietly. Niriel's gaze met his, her silver eyes reflecting the star field visible through the main viewport. Not one, she replied. For the first time, I'm not someone's daughter, ambassador, or reluctant bride. I'm simply a scientist pursuing discovery. Freedom suits you, Cairo observed. Yes, she agreed, her markings pulsing with quiet happiness. I believe it does. The Defiance's engines ignited, propelling them toward the unknown. Behind them, the political machinations of empires continued their eternal dance. Ahead lay discovery, danger, and possibility. A future chosen, not imposed. As the ship accelerated into quantum phase, Niriel realized that the human beside her had given her something far more valuable than mere escape. He had shown her that, even in a universe of predators and prey, of alliances and betrayals, true freedom came not from running away, but from choosing one's own path forward. And she had chosen the stars.